Hello and welcome to the Down Under Visa Philippines to Australia podcast. Now today we will be looking at the blog post on the Down Under Visa blog page entitled Coping with Australian Visa Document Errors and Delays. Okay, this is one of these fairly typical articles which I tend to write. My motivation is invariably helping clients, and when I see clients struggling with something, this is generally the time that I think, okay, time I wrote an article about this to try and help. That's invariably the purpose behind all articles. Okay, Australian visa applications from Philippines. We find these mostly go smoothly, but there are times when visa document errors lead to processing delays. Mistakes in NSO documents need correction. Late registered birth certificates require extra evidence. Annulments drag out in the courts. And tuberculosis, or TB, that means long treatment. Now, legal paperwork and medical treatment and general bureaucracy adds to the processing time and therefore time apart, and this leads to misery and often anger. Australian Filipina couples and visa delays. A lot of agents don't like doing partner visas, and they don't like doing them because there is a lot of emotion involved. Yes, we find this to be very true, of course, and but we like doing them. We do empathise with clients, and we do believe in what we do. So we learn to deal with these things. When an Australian Filipina couple are apart, they naturally miss each other. Now, I can still remember how awful and lonely was that hollow feeling when you parted at the airport after spending a few weeks together. When you're in love, you soon get very comfortable with your lady, or your gentleman, by your side 24 hours a day. You look around and they smile back at you. You speak and they answer you. Then suddenly you are surrounded by strangers once again, and those lonely nights begin. So why is the Australian government so strict? The Australian government, the Department of Home Affairs, as they call it now, in other words, the Immigration Department in Australia, or the Australian Embassy in Manila, they are strict. Now, the Constitution gives them the power to protect the borders, and the Australian people expect them to. And the rules they follow are not just a set of loose guidelines. Migration regulations 1994 are an Act of Commonwealth, LAW law. There's no flexibility. Information provided must be correct with no errors or omissions. Applicants must pass the health criteria. Relationships must be genuine and believable. Now, they have no choice but to follow the law. Now, why are there so many document errors from the Philippines? Look, every culture has its area of emphasis. This is what makes the world so interesting. In the Philippines, the emphasis is on people, kindness, family, smooth and harmonious relationships, but less emphasis is put on accuracy and timeliness and overall efficiency of official processes and paperwork. As a result, you get frequent visa document errors, and correcting these mistakes take time. Many of our applicants get caught in a spot when they discover these mistakes have happened. And if you've been following our articles over time, you will have realised that this is a fairly frequent topic that comes up. Errors with NSO documents are very, very common. Probably 1 in 10 documents we get from the NSO has an error in it of such that requires correction. Again, it happens because, basically Filipinos are careless with documents and with facts and spelling, etc., etc. That's both the people who provide the information in the first place, and those who record it and those who process it. Again, emphasis is elsewhere. If this was in Germany, you'd probably never see a mistake because people are extremely strict about things being done correctly. Not so correct here, although people I find are a lot kinder and they put more emphasis on being decent to each other. So, you take the rough with the smooth, and that's the way it goes. And but yes, as I mentioned, and the Australian government is very strict, and the Australian government doesn't tolerate the types of errors that the Philippines tends to tolerate. So, end result, there you have it. You have couples who miss each other. On one side you have a strict Australian government that sets very high standards, and on the other side you have a Philippines where ordinary people as well as bureaucracy are a bit too relaxed when it comes to official documents. So a clash of cultures, and a lovesick couple get caught in the middle of it all, and there you have it. And as I said, the emotions tend to run a little bit raw. If you're thinking to yourself, okay, we're on the, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, we'll be together soon, and then all of a sudden, well, bang, on to the next bit. Visa document errors and your visa applications. One day you get the email from Jeff or Jeremy at Down Under Visa telling you there's a problem with your document. Wrong spelling, dates, places, genders, or other facts on an NSO document. Mistakes made on a questionnaire in the beginning can lead to a false statement being made on a visa application. Or even a deliberate lie made on a questionnaire leads to a false statement being made on a visa application. Or maybe they found the applicant has tuberculosis and needs treatment, or maybe that annulment that the lawyer promised you would be done in less than 6 months is nowhere near complete. There are many causes of delay. End result is it takes you longer than you thought before you can get together, and that's really, really hard to take, of course. And look, we do know what this feels like. Me and myself in particular, as we went through all of this before when we applied for our own prospective marriage visa. What I said before about lonely, hollow feelings, well, look, they're distant memories now, but it's still a memory. I still do remember it. The nights were the worst. A client said to me just today, I said, I don't know how I'm going to tell her, because I had to tell him the bad news about an error that was made, and I believe it was a perfectly honest mistake. However, the department don't look at it quite like that. I told him we feel exactly the same when we need to give a client bad news that will lead to a delay. We absolutely hate it, because we know exactly how much you want to be together, and it gives us absolutely no pleasure in giving you bad news. We have to do it far too often, but it doesn't mean at any point do we get relaxed, casual or blasé about it, and we do care. However, we can't put off telling you, and we cannot look the other way. There's no way we can do that. We have a code of conduct that we have to adhere to, and if we accept an error, or if we knowingly accept a false statement or a bogus document, my goodness, we will lose our registration, so that ain't happening. And if there was a simple way of fixing this to prevent delays, we would have done it already. The news would have been, guess what, we found an error, but don't you worry, we came up with a solution. We would have already done it, I promise you that. There are certain realities we can't get around, and this is not a flexible system you can negotiate around. You can't say, look, I'll make an appointment with the embassy and I'll go in and I'll tell the ambassador that we're in love, and he's sure to understand and say, don't you worry about that, we'll let it go through. They have to act within the law, and when it comes to issues of particularly, any of those issues, annulments, if somebody isn't, if you're talking about a partner visa and you are not legally free to marry, well, can't proceed with a partner visa. You can't get married when you're still legally married. If you have tuberculosis, you will not pass the health checks. You will not get into Australia. That's all there is about it. If you have made a false statement, if you have a bogus document, now a bogus document is a document which contains false information. Doesn't necessarily mean a forgery. It can be just, the information's wrong. That's a bogus document. They have no choice. The ambassador can't override it. The minister can't override it. Okay. So that's the way it works. Now, prevention. What we would ask you to do, especially if you are in the early stages of preparing a visa application from Philippines to Australia, is to take very careful note of what we tell you. Now, we send you a lot of information where we don't just hint at it, we make it very clear. You answer a question on the questionnaire, a box will pop up and say, are you sure? Are you absolutely certain of your answer? Get it wrong and you risk a refusal and a 3-year ban. These things pop up. We have declarations, we have do's and don'ts forms that you have to sign which warn you about these dangers. So we do warn you continuously. For goodness sakes, take note of this. So be accurate with the ESS questionnaires. Don't lie, don't make careless mistakes, don't go, well, I don't know, so I'll just say no, or I don't know the date of birth of that person, so I'll make it up. Look, goodness me, it's a bit embarrassing admitting I have a child when I wasn't married, so I'll pretend I don't have one. You can't do things like that. Don't lie, don't make careless mistakes. Make sure you include every bit of information that is asked of you. If you don't understand, ask us. Don't leave out travel details or addresses or details of former marriages and de facto relationships or of kids, whether migrating or not. It will make it clear. It will say, do you have children? And it will say whether migrating or not. You can't say I left them off because I thought you only meant the ones who are travelling. Not at all. Travel details, addresses, details of employment, etc. A common thing we get is, have you travelled overseas? No. Have you worked overseas? Yes. Do you have any addresses other than, the place you were born in? No. So somehow somebody worked in Kuwait, but they never travelled there and they never lived there. But somehow they had this magical job there. That's just carelessness. We generally pick these things up and we generally ask you, but the bottom line is it is your responsibility to provide us with this information. We're not mind readers. You cannot turn around and blame us for not knowing something that you didn't tell us. It is your responsibility to give us this information, and it is your responsibility to check the application forms before we lodge the visa application. It is not ours. Okay, so yes, don't guess about dates. Read and reread the questionnaire before you send it to us. And exactly the same thing when it comes to the application form, which we will ask you to check before we lodge. Please read it and reread it and be absolutely certain. Now, leading on to damage control when somebody wasn't careful. Okay, if we still identify errors in documents and previous applications, please be grateful we identified it now, and it didn't let it get into the system where it could have led to a visa refusal and a 3-year ban. Now, nobody likes it if we email them and say, look, I'm sorry to tell you this, but there's a problem with the birth certificate, and this is going to take, it might take time to fix. Please be grateful for the fact we found the error in the first place. because if we didn't, and if we had lodged that and they picked up that error, the visa would be refused, and it would be 3 years before you could apply for another visa. Okay. And that's what happens when an application is lodged with false statements, and by false statements that also includes omissions of important information. If it says, did you have children, for example, and you say no when you do, that's a false statement. If it asks for all of your addresses and you left some of them off, that's a false statement. The entire application is a false statement. And bogus documents, which, as I said, is documents with incorrect information. Regulation 4020, also called Public Interest Criteria 4020 or PIC 4020. Now, when we stick our necks out and risk the messenger being shot, that's us, the messenger being shot for our troubles, it means we saved you from a much worse fate. Yes, you may have 3 to 6 months, or possibly even longer, a delay to get those document errors corrected legally, or you may have to wait until it's been 12 months since the previous application with the error ended, because you can get stung if you, say, applied for a tourist visa with false information, and then we apply for another visa with correct information, and they see that an error was made and a false statement was made on the previous application. Yes, that in itself can lead to a visa refusal and a 3-year ban. So that means if that happens, any visa that you held within the last 12 months. So if that visa ended 8 months ago, well, it means you have 4 months before we can apply for another one, where it's clear of that 12 months. Okay. You have longer to wait and a whole lot and more work to do, no doubt, to correct the document, but it's better than getting a refusal and a 3-year ban. And if it wasn't for us, if you were trying this by yourself and you didn't know it was an error, it was a problem, well, you would have stumbled blindly into trouble, and it would have ruined your day absolutely. Okay, thank you very much for that. Actually, I don't even think I introduced myself at the start. Jeff Harvey, from registered migration agent from Down Under Visa in Manila. Hope you enjoyed that, and we look forward to talking to you again on our next podcast. Thank you very much.